Oh, what happened to your beard?
It'll come back. uh, every
It's
once in a
different.
while. Yeah,
You
I was
look
shaving.
younger.
I was shaving yesterday. Just wanted to get it down to a stubble or whatever, but then the razor wasn't working out very well, so I went shorter than I normally do.
Mm, usually, if I have a thick beard and I take it all off, it means I'm going through a midlife crisis again.
I could feel like it was that was happening this week. So
Oh, okay.
no, yeah. So I was on vacation last week. Didn't get any work done on my table. Um, got back, and now I'm trying to recover from it. It's a vacation isn't really a vacation when you got kids and stuff like that. It's more of a trip, and it's exhausting. So, but that's not really a good excuse. Um, but I just gotta get my momentum back on it. But given how long this is taking me and everything, even if I were to come up with I could probably come up with a simpler design. But I'm doubting heavily my ability uh, to turn table making into any meaningful business other than like a side hustle type thing, a very small side hustle type thing.
When did you decide
Enjoyable.
that?
Just thinking about the fact that I started this in like or what June, and it's August now,
Has it
and
been that long?
I think so. And I've got basically only the summer months to do this, unless I reconfigure remodel my pole shed into something where it's uh, 4 seasons or whatever. So, because once the cold comes, it's like, no, I'm out of luck on that one. I don't know. Maybe it's time I start helping you out.
You're invited. I my mind is severely trained on social proof. So, like when I'm out on the streets, like I just start zeroing in on everything that, and maybe it's confirmation bias, but everything that verifies my assumptions. I'm seeing people on normal bicycles um, delivering food now, not scooters. I'm talking about like normal bicycles, stuff that I would see in like Toronto. So I don't know. I guess I'm just trained on seeing what I want to see.
Yeah,
So
confirmation bias or not
yeah,
confirmation bias. Yeah,
I mean essentially
uh,
yeah.
yeah.
So what are your plans? Are you acknowledging that this is the end of the chapter for carpentry in regards to a channel of income, or
I think what I'm gonna do
what?
is I'm gonna finish the thing because I need to finish it. And my I'm gonna still give it to my brother-in-law, and I'm still gonna ask him to put it up. I'm gonna ask him to put up for a ridiculous price, something where it's in league with a lot more expensive tables. Something that really shouldn't sell. If it does, I mean, then I'll probably make another one. But um, I mean, for the amount of part time work and stuff I put on it, yeah. I mean, if I had a plan and was just producing the table in a very very simple manner, I mean, I could probably get it done a lot faster if I wasn't coming up with everything and on the fly. If I said this is my plan, I'm doing it like this, I throw it together. A simple thing. I mean, it probably wouldn't take nearly this long. So, but I'm seeing the winter coming, and I'm like, well, once that hits, my capability of doing this is pretty low, given just the fact that you need a certain temperature even to just do uh, polyurethane or any sort of like finishing requires a certain temperature.
I thought this
So
was being done in your basement though.
no, it's I have a pole shed.
Okay.
like and there is an insulated room in the back of it, but it's not heated. I've thrown out a couple and I can get a few months out of it, but it's not well ventilated either, so it's not exactly a great place to do staining or anything that requires you to not or to have fumes. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think if I were to make it so that I could get a very simple, repeatable table, it could be a thing I could do, but the direction I took with this first one is more like highly artisan type thing or whatever. So we'll see. So I'm gonna still do it, but I'm once I'm done, I did submit for that. Told you that this destination downtown challenge thing in our town for starting like a brick and mortar business. Um, and so I'll learn mid August whether that turns into anything. In the meantime, I don't know. Other than finishing my table, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm such a terrible entrepreneur.
No, don't say that. You're you're hold up. The first one was your packaging, your video game packaging.
Yeah,
And then you're like, this is tedious. The market's not showing enough interest, or at least I'm not able to tap into it the way I would like. Then it was building out tables. Did you ever consider FBA? Because that was the first thing that I didn't attempt it. I was capturing analysis on it, right? And then I was like, pivot.
yeah,
Like, have you considered that? Or
yeah. Looking way back, and it's not something I'm super interested in doing. So I don't
yeah,
know. The whole. I mean, the I don't know if it's just romanticized or whatever, but the idea of doing something more local, um, especially after seeing my brother-in-law and what he's going through with his business, and um, not saying it's making them mega millions, but I mean it's not making a lot off of it. But just kind of the experience of doing all the things for a small local business is kind of intriguing. You know, with uh, with like a online startup or something, you've got. I mean, it's kind of the potential for income's a lot greater, but um, it's also a lot of the same problems of just working on I don't know code and just being kind of by yourself and whatever. So I don't know. I might look at local business stuff though, because it's there's a lot of businesses you could probably get into in a town that that would be just as fulfilling as something online. But we'll see. We'll see if this. We'll see what this. If I get picked to go into the top 10 for this competition thing. I'm guessing I won't, but you know, if it does come down, I'll have to pivot to that right away because I have basically a month to prep for a presentation on it. So, but
don't sound so down, man.
yeah,
That vacation just worn you down. But
yeah, it's yeah. Might be some other reasons too, but yeah,
okay.
yeah, getting back to work too, and
All right. Well, let's shift focus off of you. Let's talk about
yeah,
me. Uh, I'm getting excited, man. Like I'm learning a lot. I love when I'm making progress, even if no one downloads the app. I know more about just distributed computing and microservices than I did like ever, right? And not saying that, I mean, I'm sure like an associate or barely junior, but it's fun to learn, and it's fun to see different perspectives and trade-offs. And to make long story short, I thoroughly enjoy increasing my worth, um, just intellectually and just skill wise. So while you were on vacation popping bottles, I had Herb on. He got mad at me because I didn't say his name. I guess I didn't say his name during the recording. I didn't know it was that serious to him. You listened to that whole thing?
I skimmed a lot of it.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
skipped
yeah.
in and around. Yeah.
Yeah. So his enthusiasm kind of like gave me someone to compete with, at least last week. But right now, like I'm just working on. I have a list of services. Okay, and it's growing. So like, let me. Maybe I should launch. I got like, I think like 8 or 9 services that are like queued up for me to implement. And let me share my screen. Come here, screen.
Do you think while you're doing that, do you think I mean if that gave you a lot of motivation and stuff, do you think meeting with him more regularly would be a good thing for you too if he's up for it
Uh,
versus my failed attempts, but I'm here, but
this is your exit strategy.
no, it's not my exit strategy. I will keep going for however long. So I
Oh,
enjoy these kinds of things. So
Chrome just froze up as I was attempting to share my screen.
hmm.
Dude, I can't. It's weird because like my browser is froze, but you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can still see your camera too. I've been having I don't know if it for last couple days prior to a Windows update and some driver updates, my Chrome kept freezing up on me for just random stuff. Other things did too, but Chrome was really bad.
It's my first time experiencing any severe quality issues with Chrome. Anyways, well, I was going to show you a couple things, but I guess it's not that important. All right, to make a long story short, uh, what I'm doing is I'm building out the back end. I was able to successfully connect to a data store and send an event to the data. Well, let me start over. I was able to successfully create an event store and or establish a connection to an event store, and then from there I was able to publish an event and then read that event back out. In addition to that, I am currently working on a number of different services. Some of the services that I'm working on is like there's a enterprise service that essentially is a service that is providing a dashboard report for the health of all the services of the system itself. So it's a tech dashboard of the system's health. And then I have so that's like my enterprise service. Then I have a business activity service, which gives me the business reports of the various areas that I have customers requesting orders, the status of those orders, the locations of the couriers, the status of those couriers. So that's like a business activity service. Then I have a uh, courier reports service, which is essentially like for them to figure out how much money they're making and when they can expect payment. Um, and I have several others. Oh yeah, and then I have a couple bot services, a customer bot service and a courier bot service. These bot services I'm using to essentially assist with the quality effort of building out the delivery request orchestration, meaning that when I have a courier service up and running, I have these customer bots placing arbitrary orders in which they also have the option, depending on the percentage of randomization, to cancel an order. And I have these courier bots that are picking up or receiving these orders within their queue, and they're processing these orders with the small possibility of canceling a order, right? And so I have my plan is to have all this running in the background, and basically to turn on the throttle or increase the throttle or decrease it when I'm deploying updates to various services. So I'll like maybe do some property based tests before I deploy a service, and then I might increase the activities of customer bots and courier bots maybe for the first like 5 minutes, to simulate, not even simulate. I mean, they're actually operating off of these business services, and hopefully they should be able to expose quality issues or exceptions within the core infrastructure, before a large number of human customers, both human customers and human couriers, get to observe it. So I feel like I'm doing some space age type stuff, and I'm enjoying it. And I'll probably write a huge blog post on it and probably do some podcasts on it. And I'm really excited because I feel like I'm building Skynet right now. I got bots processing orders, and that's it.
Cool
So
shit. So did the is this all design, or have you started on like the bots and stuff and everything at this point?
I okay. So I built out the. Have I tested it yet? No, but have I wrote the core infrastructure? Yes.
Cool.
And so what's kind of interesting is that these bots, as I'm building out this bot service that generates hella bots, and these bots are through property based testing or placing random orders and performing random activities throughout the pipeline of these orders. It's actually providing me or giving me feedback on how I should refine the actual courier service or delivery service itself. And so it's essentially testing out the API for me as I'm fleshing out the workflow of these bots. But no, I haven't deployed any of this yet. I just wrote out the core infrastructure. Just like I'm not done with the actual courier service yet. I plan to be done with that by probably within the next like 2 or 3 days. But I'm enjoying it, and I listened to hella podcasts yesterday on microservices. So I'm slowly soaking in certain practices and certain anti patterns that people hate. Uh, what else? What else? What else? I've been primarily just working on the back end. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Cool. That's good progress.
yeah, it's tedious. I was gonna, of course, all this like domain-driven design thing is kind of like being enforced or reinforced as I'm trying to build out these individual services. Uh, oh yeah, in addition to that, I posted that I was looking for a business partner, um, for this app that I'm building, and so a couple people responded. One guy was the same guy that like 8 or 9 years ago I asked him if he would be interested in doing going through the WPF or Windows Presentation Foundation certification with me and doing the study group with me. He said, yeah, 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 yeah. And then I never heard from him again. So I dismissed him. Um, Even though it was like almost a decade ago, I hold on to things. So if you tell me that you're going to do something, you don't follow through, I just don't take you seriously, regardless of if you changed over time. I think some people think I'm too hard, but no, after that, you told me you're going to do it, and I didn't hear from you again. So I kind of like dismissed him or ignored him. And then there's another guy in Phoenix. He's a back end developer, and he was like, "Oh, I'm interested. I let me let me work on some Azure stuff, and I'll send you some proof of concepts, and we could meet up on video conference occasionally, and we could just try it out like that." I'm like, okay, and I didn't really expect to hear from him either. But then he Skyped me several days ago and did a demo of what he had regarding Azure Event Grid, in which he simulated, a message being published and then an email being generated to whatever recipient based on the context of that message that hit the event grid in Azure. So that sounds cool. He's he's a pretty smart guy. He understands. It appears that he's more in touch with like the operations side. He's a back end developer, so he tends to be he tends to be more competent or have a deeper understanding of just back end development and technology specifically. Hence, he said he wanted to learn more about Azure. He knows surface level Azure, but he wanted to dig deeper into it, and this would perhaps provide him an opportunity to go deeper and to share things with me as he attempts to practice and then explain what he accomplished. So I think him and I probably may do a video conference maybe once a week or maybe every other week. So he actually works a 9 to 5, unlike me. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool stuff. Should also shop around for a business, not a business partner in the way you described it, but a business partner, like someone to handle unless you're gonna start pimping it, but like it's the marketing and all of the specifically the marketing and sales aspect of it, or going out and doing the legwork. If you're starting to get even more serious, you think about this being this could legitly work.
Yeah.
Someone to drive the whole process more, maybe.
Oh yeah. That I got a lot. I almost said I got a lot done. I was doing a lot. In addition to that, I was on like another island at a Starbucks, and this one guy was like, "Hey, what language are you programming in?" I said F sharp. He was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is. What are you working on?" And so I gave him a whole spiel of what I was working on. He was like, "Oh, that's interesting. At the CoWorks facility that I frequent, there's a programmer working on the same thing. He wants to deliver to the beach, and he actually has his app out. I saw his app, and he has people working for him, but he's been struggling with regulators, and I remember that was the last thing that he was telling me was he kept on running into like regulation issues. But yeah, you this totally met a guy that's a programmer, and he's doing the same thing that you're doing. I'm like, I'm not sure if I should be upset or like thrilled. And I'm like, well, okay, so maybe I could like click up, synergize with this guy, and maybe we could be business partners. So I stalked him for 48 hours. Figured out that he worked at. I figured out the co-work facility. I didn't have his name though, so I hopped on my motorcycle, went into Miami at the place that he said at the co-work facility. I'm like, hey, is there an Asian guy with this name? Blah blah. Well, not with the name. Is there an Asian guy here? There can't be too many Asians in Miami. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, yeah, he's working on some delivery app. And they're like, yeah. There's a guy here like that. And I'm like, oh, what's his name? And like, they told me his name, and then I tried calling him a couple times, and he didn't respond. I added him to LinkedIn and sent him a message. He didn't respond. I don't think he's interested, or he's out the country or something. But are you still there?
Yeah. I mean, he could be. Like, I don't answer phone calls unless I recognize the number most of the time now. Because I don't know about you, but I get a ton of robocalls.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, I left him a couple voicemails. I guess I could send him a old fashioned email, and then just be done with it. I don't want to.
Could you find, like, is his app available on the store or something? Is it something you could go out and find, or is it all local?
I don't know what his app is. I googled beach delivery Miami because what else would someone Google? I didn't see anything at all. So like my first hunch is he doesn't want to be. It's a couple things. Like when I call, it goes straight into the voicemail. They say he's from Pennsylvania, but he has a South Florida area code. But every time I call, it goes straight into the voicemail. So like I don't know if he has like Google Voice or some type of like tool that will vet numbers that aren't registered on his phone or in his contacts, or if he's out the country, or he just isn't interested in learning what I'm trying to do and trading ideas.
Cool. Well, if anything, you learn that there's regulations you're going to need to look into. That's a good thing.
And I don't stop for cops. Oh. But yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot the past couple of weeks, or there were a lot of events that transpired. I submitted a tweet yesterday that's borderline going viral.
The microservices one.
Yeah, yeah. I was being cynical, but I'm surprised no one like trash talked me on that one.
I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for the monolith to come back. Monolith development was so much easier.
You know what's interesting is, and this is probably crazy talk, but like if and when I'm able to build out uh, a viable business, regardless of if it actually makes money or not, in which like the back end is like all microserviced out and it actually works. Hopefully, I could attract a certain type of employment where like I can actually enjoy working with people that do that type of development because they understand the importance of tooling, automation, well, automation specifically. Because I always get stuck with loser developers, man, that don't care, and I keep getting stuck with them. And I usually am the one that isn't exactly a cultural fit because they put me with loser developers that just exercise gross negligence when it comes to the customer's budget because they manually test and troubleshoot everything instead of programmatically like just verify that the software is working. I don't want to work with those people, but I keep getting stuck with them.
Do you think that's the nature of just working on the front end mostly? Because I find that it's extremely difficult to test front end type code in that way because it's malleable and people want to change it all the time. Whereas back end code, that's a lot more rigid and easier to test.
I don't think so because at the end of the day, you're testing behavior, and I'm not talking about like UI tests. I'm talking about like you're testing the controller or you're testing the view model. and you're injecting whatever dependencies that represent uh, a participant for an external system. And so you're still testing business logic. It's just, you know what? I started my career in software testing, and like I was groomed to do that before I transitioned to being like a application developer. And maybe it's just my upbringing, and maybe it's just not normal for a professional developer to, I don't know, programmatically test the systems that they're building. I thought we were professional automators, but that doesn't appear to be the case. So I don't know if it's, again, I don't know if it's the career path that I chose, or if people just suck. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know people, a lot of people that I work with. I mean, they write tests, unit tests, and people that write like acceptance tests or whatever. Like, if you look at the metrics, it doesn't do that well at finding bugs pre-production type stuff. It might help development over the long course of development, but if you're trying to get to market with a relatively bug free thing, there's other ways that do better than those types of tests.
Well, I don't think
Um,
anything is bug free, but like, what's an example of other things that you could do? And like, when you say unit test, do you mean like the pure definition of unit test, or are you just saying an automated test to test certain behavior regardless of the number of classes that it touches?
um, the former.
Yeah, so I'm not talking about that. Today I'm being cynical.
It's all right.
So like, I'm not convinced of the value of testing a specific method of a class in isolation, unless that method of a class sits on a controller or a view model and is responsible for executing a command and verifying that a property on that controller or view model has mutated to an expected value. Outside of that, it doesn't make sense to write a unit test for some dependency of a controller or a view model that's going to get tested anyway if you just test the operation of the controller or on a controller or operation on a view model. It is pointless to test logic that's already going to be executed on a higher level, um, again, view model or controller. But I think most people, they just get stuck on the pure definition, and they don't understand like the intent of why they're testing. So do you think that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, when you get into wider testing, integration testing, or system testing, then I'm all on board. Doing that in an automated fashion is a lot harder, obviously, but you need a lot less, I think, for tests. But um, I sent you a link to an article, and there's a graph in there based off of from Code Complete, and the best way to find bugs pre-production is or pre-launch or whatever is to do high volume beta testing. But modeling and prototyping, formal code inspections and design inspections and system testing and that are better in terms of finding bugs than unit, even integration and other ones. I think it's just because you need the variability of you need it to. A lot of bugs are emergent in nature, so you can test that. Hey, I said this thing is going to, given these inputs, produce this output. But then when you pair it with 10 other things and you pair it with this particular situation that someone is doing something you didn't expect, it ends up getting uh, bugs emerge.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I think bugs. I would argue that the majority of bugs are likely to be exposed on on the shell of a system. like a functional core with an imperative shell, right? So
Hmm.
like when I say functional core, you have these pure functions. They don't reach outside of their scope to mutate anything. They only manipulate whatever parameters that were passed into them, and they don't even mutate that really. They just create copies and then they return a result. And so like that's kind of deterministic, right? Whatever you pass into it, a pure function is always going to return the same exact thing 1 billion times over. Uh, I think a lot of the bugs, I think the majority of the bugs occur when you're dealing with state, right? When you're executing something that has ricocheting side effects in other parts of the system, and that's just something that I think just requires like more rigor to contain. Um, I can't click on that article unless you send it to me on Twitter because my
Yeah, I
browser
sent it
still
on Twitter.
froze. But I was also going to say I think a lot of anomalies can get removed, at least functionally, just relying on the compiler on strong types and the combination of pure functions, right? So, like
Yeah,
to make a long story short, uh, when you're able to use a combination of strong types, pure functions for as much of the domain that you can, and then you just have the shell that that you have to manage state on. I think like the battle is probably 80% won. I really do believe that based on my personal experience. Will bugs still come up? Sure, because requirements still get updated, right?
yeah,
As the business learns of as the business becomes more informed, right? So,
yeah. If you're lucky enough to use F sharp, where you can make types that mean what
dude,
they
I
mean.
don't I don't ask permission. I just sneak Trojans of F sharp in there, and
I,
that's
I
it.
was I was thinking about it yesterday.
I just do it
Pretty
because
heavy.
usually I get hired usually as like a lead developer or architect. What do I ask permission for? I'm helping you. Here, take this technology. It's
I'm
better.
just
It's
I'm
safer.
just a code monkey.
And then like if I inject Trojans of F sharp in there, then that increases the probability that you hire people that I actually like working with. Because they're naturally curious and they'll probably contribute to my knowledge of things that I never considered before. So
But yeah, I'm all on board with drinking the Kool-Aid as far as using types effectively. Um, it's something that's really exciting because it's like if you could express the system in a way that you can't make it possibly, be in an illegal state. It's like that's awesome. But to get everyone else to understand and on board with that is it's like I could understand why you would go into some place and be frustrated.
oh yeah, like with my personality type. So then like that frustration occurs when like the architecture isn't really thought out professionally. And so like I would like to think I know I'm going to butcher this that with any like complex machinery, it's going to be and feel free to help me out with the word, but I would like to say cart compartmentalized. Can I
Compartmentalized.
can I use that word? Did I butcher it?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's about right. It's a
Meaning,
little off, but yeah,
okay. How
I know
you
what
say
you
it?
mean.
Compart
Compartmentalize,
compartmentalize. I can't say it.
I think.
If I'm using the right term, meaning that you have silos of functionality, you have subsystems that are kind of like insulated and isolated, but they can still communicate, but they're still like loosely coupled, right? And so like hence domain driven design. When when the software architecture encourages subsystems that behave as their own individual systems that are somewhat siloed but can like send messages back and forth, but they don't know the implementation details of other systems that they publish messages to. then like you can literally, and this is kind of like, related to microservices or a distributed monolith, where like you can have a dedicated library that just represents a compartment or a subsystem of the overall application or software, and hopefully like you'd be able to use whatever techniques that you would like as long as it's isolated, right? And it shouldn't affect other people as long as there's a good interface for other systems to leverage to insert information into or take information out of. But it's when you have a team of developers and at an organizational level, you have these tasks or these tickets via Scrum that are just arbitrarily handed out so that anybody can touch a particular subsystem. No one owns the quality of that subsystem or that module, and no one understands the vision of that particular code base because there's so many hands in the cookie jar without anybody taking responsibility for really establishing like the architecture of that particular area of the code base. So that's the part where I get frustrated. Now, I know I just said a mouthful, but you kind of get what I'm
No,
saying.
no, I know. You put it in a way that is exactly how I'm feeling right now. So, that piece of frustration is basically where I'm at right now. That the teams that I'm on, it kept collecting new developers and new, you know, products or contexts or whatever, such that we have this suite of things, and we've got this one team, and it's like we're treated like anybody can work on any particular piece, and it's like no. I have a very specialized knowledge and thought out about this. If you put someone else in that, and every time someone else gets put on that, just drops in and does something, they 80% of the time they'll do it something just completely incorrect. And it's not their fault. It's just that like I th- I think
You
in
lose
order
the
to do it,
vision of what it was meant for. Like
yeah,
there has to be a vision, right? That's why people hire CEOs. That's why people hire people in different positions. Like because you're putting a responsibility on them to have a vision and to carry it out. But when you just have a scrum master or whatever whoever has a responsibility of just issuing out arbitrary tickets, bug fixes, whatever, and you just throw hands at a part of the system, like it's going to get obfuscated. You're going to lose the intent of that particular part of the code base. And like they just
yeah,
don't understand that is every single time you throw some arbitrary person with emphasis on arbitrary at an area of the code base, you're taking away from the architecture
yeah,
unless that person is educated and they are on board or on deck with the architectural vision of that particular part of the code. And like these people that don't write code but somehow they have high influence on a software project, they don't get it because they've never been in the trenches. And
yeah. They have to have the mental. They have to have the mental model of the system, like having coding ability plus the mental model of what you're trying to build together. That produces good code. As soon as you plop someone in that doesn't understand the mental model, you either have to give them a lot of time to get up to speed and then make meaningful changes, which you should have obviously some redundancy or whatever, or a couple developers that share the model and the vision, like you said, like or you just don't don't have them just drop in for a quick change. Maybe things like infrastructure changes, like oh, we're going to switch out this logger for this logger, as long as you've abstracted it away well, like that stuff you can drop in. But it's like I want to drop in and change some business rule. Well, do you understand what you should even test or where that cascades to? And do you understand that this context affects it, but this one over here, that also, like there's I think there's just knowledge of the system that you have to have in order to make changes in. And yeah, we're not interchangeable pieces. We're just not. The other thing I'm struggling with lately is just the idea that I'm like 2 or 3 steps removed from the actual like people that have the problem. So it's like there's like the product owner, or I've never had a conversation, a full on conversation with our product owner, I think. And that's just not what you're supposed to do in a kind of a Scrum Agile, if you're trying to follow Scrum, anyways, even though that's not really whatever. Let's not get into that. But the business people, or the ones that are actually going to be using the system, or some other teams, I'm getting like I'm getting it 2 steps removed from that is where I'm getting like the requirements for things. So there's this whole body of people coming up with like, oh, these are the requirements. And I'm like, well, why is that a requirement? It's the requirements. We can't change it. Well, have you thought about doing it? I don't know if that's an actual requirement that the person 2 steps from me away has, or if it's your interpretation of their requirement based on what you think a limitation of the system is, and you have no idea whether that's actually going to make our lives easier. Like they'll make things like, oh, this will be easier to do, so we'll make this the requirement.
It
But if I look
reminds
at it and I'm like, well, no, it's not going to make it easier. This would make it easier, and that might be what they actually want, because in my head, that's what makes sense for this context. Like, why is this a limitation? And like, I have to go. Like, I'm not involved in the design decisions, or the discussion of the actual person who owns it trying to express what they want. You know, where
translated as a developer that is responsible for keeping the business up and running based on the technology that it relies on. They're not including you.
yeah, well, yeah, we're basically, they're your resources that you get thrown crap to. It's like that's not how this works. I have to get and understand the nature of this so I can and it's like every time I'm like, well, what about this? Well, don't worry about edge cases. It's like it doesn't matter when you get down into into code and you hit a spot where this happens. You have to do something, otherwise it will just do whatever it's going to do. And that could have major bad impacts on the system if you don't either shut it down or think about it. It's
There's a couple things. Do you believe that titles mean anything? Do you think that just the changing the name will change the perception?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure. Like, what's your title? Are you like developer? Are you senior developer? Are you lead developer? Are you architect? Are you just like, what's your title? What's your formal title?
I don't even know what my formal title is right now. I'm at least a senior software developer, I think, within my own company. I don't know if I've ever gotten a formal title. I
I
was
wonder.
for a little while. I was actually a lead on the team that I'm on, but then I got demoted at some point in time, um, for reasons I don't understand, that weren't really given to me. So, but I mean, when I was in that position, I understood that there's going to be other developers working on this system other than me. So every time I'd have a design discussion, I'm like, this is the person who is probably going to be working on it, who needs to understand this mental model. So I'd include them in the meetings, and I'd bring them in and try to get them to look at this. But that has never happened. I think now, for me, anyways, it's never happened. It's like, or I mean, it happens, but just it's so infrequent. So I don't know. Yeah, a title change might help, but I don't. It's not in the cards, kind of a thing.
Like,
So
I wonder what happens if on your email signature it's changed to software consultant or technical collaborator, and like, will it actually change the way people perceive you? In addition to that, because I think those words encourage conversation and solutions versus code monkey, right? In
yeah,
addition to that, I'm curious. I'm not sure how formal the process is when a feature is proposed or a feature is handed down, but I'm curious if if there is documentation for a feature, if 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 there's like the five whys that are associated for each feature that is generated or that is proposed, meaning the five whys is okay, why is this feature proposed? Because of blah blah blah. Well, why is blah blah blah
Yeah.
happening? Because boo 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 blah. Okay, and boo 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 blah did that because what? And I wonder if like how
Yeah.
effective that would be, or if that would just be annoying overhead.
No, no, no. That's that for me. Like that's what I want to know the why behind pretty much everything. And the problem is that I get beyond the first why, and I'm told the basic. It's just like people get frustrated and just don't want to deal with it. And it's like, well, if you would have included me from the beginning, or included the person you intended to develop this from the beginning in all of these discussions, like I know that I wouldn't be spending time coding at that time, but I would be spending effective time coding later because I could just hammer out the code. Code's not hard to write. It's super easy. It's understanding the mental model of what you're trying to actually build and understand how things interconnect. Coding is god awful boring, really, if you think about it. The fun or the interesting part of the hard part, and the part that you feel really good about is not writing a piece of code. It's a piece of code that does something correctly, and enables someone to do something. like and I'm just, yeah, I'll get off my thing, but I
No,
don't
no,
know.
I
I
get
just
it.
I'm maybe I'm like you. I think I don't know if I just think differently about things, and that's why I can't just be happy just getting crap handed down to me and being like, okay, I'll just implement it as I think this would be implemented, and make some code changes exactly literally as the thing is written. And when I get bugs, whatever. You didn't specify that. I'll fix them when you give them to me. I just can't do it.
Well,
I
then
don't
it's
know.
not a bug; it's a new feature.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've done a lot of that though. Actually, we'll get bugs in, and I'll be like, no, this was never specified. You didn't even raise it, and this was coded effectively to spec. So this is a feature. We don't be saying that we got a bug in it. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I need to just find. I really think that being in a like a smaller startup space would probably make more sense, because then you're actually like there's really no, if you're actually part of the team or whatever, if you had an equity stake even, maybe you're not, there's not the developer and the business, it's just you are the business too. And so you're talking to the CEOs and the salespeople and all of this stuff, and every time you put out something new, they're excited about it, and they'll give you immediate feedback in a way that when a large organization, it's like those people are on the fringes up here, you're down here, and there's all these people in the middle that are just making your everyone's lives miserable. So
it's it's interesting. Like I could talk, I could
yeah,
talk a long time about this. Whenever we have these conversations about, when I say we, I'm just saying people in general,
yeah,
about like chain of command, and like the advantages and disadvantages. I can't help but think about uh, like the war on terrorism, and it's like, what does that have to do with anything? Well, you think about like the world power on planet Earth and them being at war for 20 years in Afghanistan, right? Like, how is that possible? It's like they don't really have modern technology, right? They just have AKs and some roadside bombs. How is that possible? And to what you said, I would say that when you're dealing with chain of command, there isn't as much autonomy. There's checks and balances, and there's communication paths that require time and potential loss of context as those messages go up and then back down, which means that it takes longer time to respond usually. But then you have these quote unquote freedom fighter cells or terror cells, depending on how educated you are, that they're like the cells within tissue, right? They're loosely coupled from one another. They understand the agenda that they need to hit, but they're not necessarily communicating with each other, developing strategies that are choreographed with one another. They're all independent, but they all have a agenda, right? And so they're just you squash one. There is no head of the snake, right? You have a reaper or a predator drop a hellfire missile on one. You still have like, I don't know, 200 other cells that you still have to get rid of, right? It did absolutely nothing. All it is you just removed one node off of something that is completely redundant. So I'm done with my
Yeah.
sermon, but I just find it interesting how that stuff works. There is power in chain of command, because like there's less likelihood of rogue, and that people, they get punished or disciplined when they step out of bounds, right? Things are controlled, but then you lose speed and agility. So
Yeah. Well, I got to run, but yeah,
yeah. Thanks for
next
listening to
week,
my dissertation.
Friday next week, or
Yeah,
Thursday, or
yeah. I'm about to hit up a Caribbean festival
oh,
tomorrow,
cool.
so
Well, have fun.
I'll try, see what I can do.
I got to
Uh,
run.
all right, see ya. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Oh, my thing froze up. So how do I can't click the stop button. So how do I just kill the whole thing? I just do this. Okay. I'll do that. So you shut down. No, no, no. Hold up. How do I kill this? Hold up.